Welcome to Meet Me in the Penthouse. I am Amy, along here with my sister Molly. We help high-achieving women increase their income, but most importantly, their impact. We are neighbors, sisters, and business partners. We have built 8-figure businesses together, traveled the world together, raised our children together, mentored thousands of men and women together, and it's all because we have a penthouse mindset. We aim for the top, and we show others how to empower themselves to peel back the layers and truly step into their greatness and calling. Welcome to Meet Me in the Penthouse.
Hi, everybody. You get me today, Molly Croker, because I am home here in Ashland with, I feel like someone famous in Ashland because I've known of Lindsey Raikes. I know her product really well, but I had never actually gotten the chance to just even hang out with her other than I think buying some Girl Scout cookies is where I truly, really feel like I first met you, Lindsey. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that, Damie, and was so nice to let me set up shop with Macy to sell Girl Scout cookies. And I remember it was actually a pretty good night for her. Yeah.
And we were some of your customers. And I remember like, oh my goodness, they do, you're going to hear her story. And that's what I love about just this podcast. We're all about empowering women and especially women who pivot. And I'm just coming off a lunch and I love mentorship. That's just something that I just absolutely love. And I had a friend of mine from growing up, she wanted me to meet her daughter who's headed into college, just to kind of expand her mind about what's out there possibly beyond just medicine. And that's because I pivoted. So it's such an honor when I get to meet like younger women like that. And I know for you, that's a really important thing as well. And that's what you've learned in business. So you are not an Ashland, Nebraska girl. You are not a Nebraska girl. You were not born here. You are a
No.
Seattle girl. So I just love for people, especially that know you, about your story. So walk us through growing up in Seattle
Yeah.
and then what you started out life in and kind of
Yeah.
what happened.
Sure. Yeah. So I would actually say I was even a transplant to Seattle. So yeah, real quick, Air Force family, and we moved several different places. I had a chance to live internationally in Germany for 4 years. I was quite young. When my dad was coming up to retire from the Air Force, our last air base was in Washington State. And my parents just fell in love with Washington, didn't want to go back to the East Coast where they were from in New Jersey. And so we decided to stay. And that's kind of, how I ended up being in Washington. But I do consider Washington, that was home, kind of those formative years of growing up. Because I was in grade school when we came back to Washington. So
And raised in Seattle, right?
yeah, raised in Eastern Washington, actually, really small farm town not far from Spokane, Washington. Eastern Washington University is there. So that's kind of what puts the little town on the map. But I would say Cheney is kind of similar to Ashland, though Ashland's quite a bit smaller, but a farming community like Ashland. So it's kind of crazy how it's come full circle a little bit, right? Where I started out and where, I'm now raising my family.
Which I love. And your first career was in fashion design, right? That was your undergraduate.
Yeah, it was fashion. Yeah, fashion merchandising, marketing. And I accepted a position. I interned with Macy's Northwest. And then I had an opportunity after college to go in for an externship where I was hired in as a buyer. Really loved that role. I had a great buyer that I worked with. When you're talking about mentorship, Becky, she really taught me a lot and took me under her wing, allowed me the runway to do a lot of stuff that she didn't let previous assistant buyers do that were in my role. But unfortunately, that what life happens. That was cut short because there was that economic downturn. What was 2008, and unfortunately, Macy's decided to condense their divisions, and so my division was being rolled into Macy's California. So here I am, not long after, out of college, first job, living in Seattle by myself. I had my own apartment and I'm getting laid off, which is scary. You have student loans to pay for. I mean, just my bills to pay for. And so I quickly had
Young. I mean, you're
to,
23,
yeah,
24.
23, 24. And I had just met my now husband at that point too. So yeah, I had to quickly figure out what I was going to do. And so that's where I chose not to find another job within buying, because I had peers that took other jobs in buying, but then they were laid off for like a second time. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall that this was going to be around for a while. So I needed to find something a little bit more stable. And that's where I went into Comcast Spotlight. It's the advertising division of their cable company as an account coordinator. Definitely looking back, I was overqualified for the position. But for me, I looked at that year-ish that I spent there. It was keeping me relevant in a professional setting. I felt like during that time, I was still learning new things, networking with people, just overall computer skills, right? Because I knew whatever I was going to do professionally I had to know various programs and be savvy on the computer.
So I love that you said that you were overqualified, but you stayed for a year. That is some profound wisdom at 24. It really is. But knowing like I'm going to need these skills anywhere, where did you feel like you were overqualified?
Just so essentially, like what the role was, I was scheduling as the salespeople, sold the airtime. I was going in and kind of helping to schedule it and do the creative and whatnot. And whereas coming from a buyer, I oversaw all the price changes for that division, right? I had to manage our inventory because, it's all about moving that inventory, right? I remember we had a
Right.
kind of going back, we had a weekly meeting, our division. You had these weekly meetings and you had to go in with your top sellers, your new merchandise, your top sellers, and your slow sellers. And our big boss always got on you on those slow sellers because that was the stuff you're going to have to mark down and that would take a hit to your gross margin, right? The bottom dollar. And so that, at 23, 24, being in charge of that was a
Yes.
big deal. Also, I was in charge of all of the advertising. So those little Macy's booklets that you would get,
Right.
I was in charge of what went in there and the content and what actual style went on the model. Sometimes I would go down to the photography floor because they weren't positioning the item right. I was designer innerwear, so intimate apparel. So showing them how to
I love this side of you.
I was like, no, that doesn't look right. That looks really weird, because you would get those proofs back and you could edit, like
Right.
what was wrong. And so finally, after several rounds, one particular time, I was like, let me just come down there. And I literally went up to the model and I positioned it where it needed to be so the photographer could take the picture. But so then, yeah, going back to Comcast. So it was just, I was in charge of so much in that role.
Right.
So stepping into a role like this, it was more checking the boxes and get this done.
Mhm.
It wasn't so much of the decision making. It was more just executing the tasks that needed to be done. But I don't think that was bad,
Right.
because
Right.
I was still learning, and I felt like that type of role was better for me than going and getting a job at like Starbucks as a Starbucks barista, right? Like what I was learning there in that year-ish that it was there, I could translate that to what I
Mhm.
choose to do
Did you
next.
know that? Like, did you know that at the time?
Honestly, I don't think I did. I think
Uh-huh.
looking back, as I talk with people or I talk with young people,
Right.
about like, because my career path it's not a straight line. I mean, it zigzags. But I think it was having supportive people around me at that time to help me make those decisions. I mean, Justin was a huge support. My parents were a big support. Obviously they had to step in
Mhm.
a little bit financially to help me out because it's expensive living in the city.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I took out of it, and then that just kind of became my mentality is learn whatever you can in that like chapter or that stop that
Yes.
you're at. It may not be the perfect fit, but have a good attitude, show up, give it your all. Because what I will say is every place that I have transitioned from, I could call back any of those managers, bosses, colleagues. I left on a good note, and they
That's
understand why I was transitioning.
and that is big. And I also love that you just embrace that. You have the most positive mental attitude about it.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking, oh, this is, I'm overqualified, but embracing, but what are the parts that are great? I'm going to learn new skills. I'm going to need this to transition to another place. I know there's more is coming. I
Yeah.
don't know when, but I'm going to embrace it. And you were not expecting then this
Yeah.
call where someone actually recruited you.
Yeah, so I was working from home one day and I got a call from an Amazon recruiter. And I remember with friends, some of the friends, because we were in the kind of the tech world there, and that was at that time in Seattle, that type of stuff was heating up. And one of my good friends had also gotten recruited and for the same team. So we went to high school together, funny enough, and our names are both Lindsey, and we were but she's like, hey, yeah, she goes, I got a call from Amazon. I was like, really? And it was maybe like a month later. Yeah. So I get a phone call and I was happy, where I was at. Cause at this point I was at a tech startup managing retail businesses' online portfolios, their online marketing. And I was happy there, really enjoyed it. But Justin's like, you have to hear him out, it doesn't
Mhm.
hurt to get more information. And I think that is something so important to tell young people. Like, it doesn't hurt, even if you think it's not going to be a fit or, maybe not so sure
Mhm.
about the company. It doesn't hurt to have a conversation and get the information. I'm glad I had the conversation because it turned out what they were pitching me for, or what they were trying to recruit me for, was a startup business within Amazon. It was a daily deal business. Their response to the daily deal, like Groupon, Living Social, that was kind of really trending at that time.
Right.
And I was like, gosh, this sounds really interesting. One of my good friends is working over there and really likes it. And so I went through their interview process, which is extensive.
I wondered.
It's extensive. You go through 2 phone screens and then an all day in-person interview, and you're interviewing with
Wow.
like 4 different people in
And
their
at this
finance.
point, how old are you?
I probably would have been maybe late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, late 20s. Yeah, late 20s. So maybe like 28.
Little experience. I mean, a
I had,
6 years of experience at this
yeah,
point under your belt.
yeah, yeah. And so what they brought me in was, I felt like the position suited. It was what was it? An account manager is what it was. And so basically I was working on kind of similar to my cable advertising days, where you're working with the handoff from the sales team to get this deal in place, kind of make sure the legal is there, because that type of stuff, you had to make sure your legal was buttoned up. And so, yeah, it sounded interesting. They ended up offering me the position. And like I said, even though I was happy where I was at, I knew that it was a great opportunity, that Amazon was a huge company where I could learn a lot. And so I made the decision to leave, again, on good terms. I remember my manager saying, is there anything we can do to make you stay? And I had said, I appreciate you offering, but I've made up my mind. I'm going to take the position. And they respected me for that. I'm sure they were a little bummed, but I think we all, especially because I was younger, you have to do what's right for you.
Right. Right.
And I felt this was the next thing that I kind of had to feel it out. And it was a whirlwind, being a startup business within Amazon. Me and my colleagues, we worked our little tails off. It was hard work. You think
More than 40 hours a week.
oh, yes. Especially, so this is where I said the reason I wanted to feel Amazon out was I had an amazing manager, and she really took me under her wing and taught me. And I was able to move into the management track. And so then I became an operations manager. I oversaw an account management team. So I had about 10 people under me. And so I felt like if I would have stayed in my past, I probably wouldn't have had that growth
Mhm.
trajectory of that opportunity. And I
So
felt
another mentor. This wasn't like
another,
your
no. And
similar things to her though. Do you feel like? Because
uh,
mentorship is powerful. Do you see like overlap at all with your first one versus this one?
I felt it was different, same and different in the same way, because they are both giving, I think they saw the potential in me. So they were
Okay.
pushing me and giving me more work because they knew I could handle it. Did I, especially in this latter, was I always perfect in what I did? I mean, I also appreciate about this manager at Amazon was sometimes we had some tough conversations. I remember we were in they are called WBRs, weekly business review. And so when you're a manager, all the managers are in this room. You're going through all the financials or the sales, the data for that last week, that last month, right? And so I was in charge of reporting on my piece of business. And I don't remember the specifics, but I got, I think, a question asked or called out by a big manager, and I didn't quite know how to respond. I wasn't prepared for it. And I remember after the meeting, I think she said something along the lines of like, you could have like prepared me for that, or, and I would say I'm a big feeler, and so that really hit me. I'm like, oh, I won't make that mistake again. Like, I'll make sure I'm buttoned up and I'm prepared. Like, I have all of my call outs planned. If there's anything, in kind of in my business sector that is kind of out of the norm for that last couple of weeks that I think someone's going to ask a question on, I better make sure I'm ready. So
I love that. You didn't sulk and cry about it. You were like, I'm going to be better prepared. Like you took it, it was received well.
yeah. And like I said, to this day, I still remember it, And so,
Uh-huh.
like I said, I don't remember the stage, but I was just like, oh man, But I appreciated her, yeah, just in me pushing me and always making me wanting to be my best and showing me how to, yeah, do certain tasks at hand. And so, yeah, so I spent almost 4 years there at Amazon. I got married during that time. And that's where Justin and I knew that at some point we would move back to Nebraska. And so it was a year after us getting married. And my group there at Amazon, they kind of closing it down. And so it was actually, I mean, looking back, it was the perfect time for me to close out that chapter in Seattle. I mean, if we would have chosen to stay, I would have done just fine. My career path obviously would have looked a lot different, but I would have done fine. I would have interviewed and found another position within Amazon. And I'm sure I would have, taken whatever came my way, but that wasn't. So we left. I took about 6 months off. I kind of call it my personal sabbatical, why we closed out life in Seattle and moved to Nebraska. I had one stop here, still like in the corporate world. It was another tech company. And I spent a year there before having my first son. We couldn't find childcare for him. And so that was really the reason I didn't go back, because I was like, what do I do with my baby?
Uh-huh.
But it was at that time, and actually kind of while we were in the process of moving back from Seattle, at the farm in Ashland, Justin was still involved from afar and was basically, talking to our cattle manager, Jared, is like, hey, like, because I think it was, if I remember correctly, the cattle at that time was a down market. So looking to do something different. And Jared, our cattle manager, was raised in Bassett, well versed in the cow calf side of the cattle industry. And so that's where Wagyu was starting to trend. We mainly were, our herd was Angus. So he had heard about people doing a cross, what they call American Wagyu. And so we did a small group of that. And when we landed here in Nebraska, we had some that were ready for harvest. And so as a family, we tried the steaks and we're like, wow, this is phenomenal. We can't sell this on the commodity market. We need to do something different. So we moved really quickly. I think we actually leased the space in downtown Ashland because it was available. And at that, you just don't have space that comes available. So we signed the lease and then kind of figured everything out. In hindsight, is that the best way? You should probably maybe have some more stuff figured out.
But not really, because we always talk about like make a decision. Like you made a decision, you went after it. And explain, Lindsay, for people that don't know Raikes beef, like what, as you're in Seattle, do you even understand, like how big this could be or what their operation looked like or what it really was? And then explain like what this was when you came back.
Yeah. So when I was in Seattle, I mean, because I had spent, a good 7 years coming back to Nebraska and visiting, but we were never like at the farm. I wasn't involved at the farm really at all. I only knew a little about from what, Justin talked about. And, he talked to me about, some of his meetings and stuff with, the team we have here on, that we had on the ground, but I really knew nothing about it. And I'll even go as far to say, like, if I were going to the grocery store, which I don't get beef from the grocery store anymore, I mean, I wouldn't have known the difference from the chuck to a ribeye, which to maybe people that are listening don't know.
That would be me too.
Yeah, you have your animal and you have the different subprimals or the muscle groups, I guess would be maybe the easier way to put it, And so the most prized is the tenderloin, where the filet mignon comes from, and that's 1% of like a 1,500-pound animal. Again, I would have not known that 1% 10 years ago.
No,
I would have just been like, it's beef from a cow.
exactly.
And so we had, when we were leaving Seattle, we had no idea that Raikes Beef Company was going to be a thing. I don't even, maybe even if I knew that, Justin had talked to Jared about trying to do this cross just to, try something new. It wasn't until, we were back here and he had mentioned like, oh yeah, those, the cattle are ready. We're going to harvest some. And then, we had some as a family meal with other family members. And
Was anybody doing Wagyu then?
there were definitely players in the field before us, but you didn't hear about it as much as you do now. So I would say we got into it at a good time. And so it worked out well that, had it, we had this lease space. I literally had just had Crosby where, our manager of finance, Michaela, was doing a lot to get this off the ground running. Jared, our cattle manager, and then I was trying to when we said, oh, we need someone to kind of oversee this business. And it was kind of perfect timing because I didn't have childcare for Crosby. I was like, what is next for me career wise? I didn't know. And I was like, well, I have the business background. I can learn the cattle side. And so that's where we decided to have me oversee it. And it took a lot those first few years to figure it out. I mean, I would say, the stuff like the website and, like learning how to price, like that stuff was easier. I didn't do it. Didn't do it by myself. Michaela was super, helpful. We did that together. And we had a lot of people on the team that helped get this off the ground. So it wasn't just Justin and I by any means. We all brought something to the table and worked together. And we still do to this day to kind of to make it work. But as far as like the product I was trying to sell, that took a lot. And I think when we were harvesting the animals, I'd be there when they were processing, like cutting down into steaks, because I was like, there's no better way to learn than,
Oh, I'm sure.
than to kind of see, you're like, oh, this comes from that. And, I have like got my own version of a textbook it's called the NAP guidelines, that is industry speak of like the specifications of how you cut different steaks and stuff like that. And so I just asked a lot of questions. I was there, and I think just immersing yourself in it, you slowly learn it. And I would have never dreamt in a million years I was be living in a small town, Nebraska, doing retail beef, but I love it. It's allowed me to be a mom, but also have something professionally on the side that continues to challenge me. And if someone, I look back, college professors are always like, oh, what's your 10-year plan, your 15-year plan? I would have never nailed this. I think the biggest thing is just like noticing the signs or the opportunities in front of you and just saying, hey, I'm going to take that and see where it leads me.
Well, obviously you have a growth mindset. That's evident that you have. I'm so curious, when you are in Seattle, were you just like, no, don't take me to Nebraska, or were you excited about it?
I was open to it. I think going back to how I was raised, because my dad was Air Force. And so we didn't move as much as some families, but we definitely moved. And when we lived in Germany, my parents were like, gosh, we're here, we're going to travel. So I think that the sense of wanting to let the adventure and travel kind of hit me early. And so I was like, cool, let's do this and see what's next.
Right.
So I was open to it. Was it hard leaving everything I know, my family, all these friendships? Absolutely. With where technology is today, you can still keep in touch. And I do.
True.
But you build, new relationships and, still actively doing that here, especially since when we first moved, we went to Lincoln. because I think Justin's like, that'd be a big shock if I took her from Seattle to Ashland. And then we just moved to Ashland. Well, it'll be coming up on a year in August that we just, built our house for Justin to be closer to the farming operation and for our kids to have a smaller school.
I mean, what a gift, truly. And I feel like in Nebraska, yes, there are families that are in the beef industry. How long has the farm been around? Tell us a little bit more about Raikes overall, about the name,
Sure.
is it more than just cattle? We've been doing this for 100 years?
Yeah. So Justin is pretty cool. His fifth generation. So his family farm has been here in Ashland before Nebraska was a territory, but our what we call the home place is kind of center of operations. I mean, our land is kind of scattered about, but since 1910, he has, so that's pretty cool. You take pride
That's
in that. And so we originally in commodity cattle, where you buy them, you fatten them up and you sell them off. And so the Wagyu is a smaller subset where we are breeding and raising those, right? And then we're also in Justin, when he came back full time to the farm, gosh, 4 years ago, is transitioning a lot of the acres to organic. So we do organic crops and conventional. And so that's where like the farming operation is so much larger, it's such a larger footprint than even just our little Raikes beef. Raikes beef is just kind of something fun we're doing on the side that I love. We want really not to jump all over the place, but the Raikes beef was born, or the reason we wanted to do it was we wanted to provide high quality beef to people.
hmm
I mean, it's truly what it was about, being from the beef state. We wanted to provide high quality beef. And then, we had this American Wagyu. So we differentiate a little bit than your standard just full blood Angus, which is great. But we like the combo of the Wagyu with the Angus.
And do you sell? Because I know there's a lot of people that listen in Nebraska, but people from all over. But how do people get your product?
Yeah, so we do nationwide shipping. And so we do have a website for that, rakesbeef.co. I ship on Mondays. That's what I was doing this morning. I was shipping boxes that go all across the US. We even ship to Hawaii. I had a few folks like, hey, I want beef in Hawaii. I don't ship there often, but I can. And then we do have a local presence. We used to have a storefront. We made the decision a few years ago to close that down and we're more virtual, but we have retail partners, Farinay Bakery, Ruhlman's Meat Market right in the Ashland area. The Mercado locations in Omaha and Lincoln and Leon's in Lincoln also carry our stuff. But you can still buy directly from us. If you go to our local website, there's a shop local button and I have several redirects all over. So if you're local, you can hit on that and it'll bring you to our local website. So it's a separate website, was just the easiest way to do that. And so I deliver to people in Lincoln, Gretna, Omaha, and we do have a freezer at Virtuoso Pizza in Benson where I can go drop off orders into the freezer there.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And Wagyu, I mean, is there anybody else doing Wagyu in Nebraska?
Now there are quite a few people that are doing
Okay.
Wagyu, and there's some people doing full blood Wagyu as well. So we're definitely not the only ones doing it. I mean, I feel like Wagyu is a buzzword right now.
Right.
It's really becoming popular. I mean, it's still kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the larger, beef industry, but it is picking up. And like I said, I think we entered at the right time and we're happy with our product. And so just trying to get it to as many people as we can.
And I love what you're doing with organic farming. That is a buzzword for me. And so
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Is there anything as we kind of wrap up that makes you feel like that your product stands out? I don't know. Do you talk to your cows? Do you lovingly feed them? I don't know. Like, where I'm like, okay, that a story will stick with me. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's just we believe in, treating obviously our animals with respect, fair treatment, humane treatment. No, we don't do anything special. I can't say that we do anything special, but it's really important, like it is for us humans when we have babies in utero. And so what the mama is eating, it's really important what the mama cows are eating. And so I think it's just, giving them a well-rounded diet. We do give them vitamins, like we take supplements, right?
Yeah.
All of that stuff is important when we turn them out to pasture. to, mow down the rest of the corn stalks, or some of the pastures we've planted stuff, grasses and whatnot, because my husband is explained they'll eat what they are like deficient in, or what they feel, what they need. And so I think it's just like, the health of aim, it's kind of just like us as humans, right?
Right.
Making sure that they have a well-balanced diet, because you will definitely see that, or won't see it in the quality of the meat.
Right. Right. So you can't say it's 100, you can't say grass fed.
No, but we do, yeah. They are grass fed, but they're not 100% grass fed. I like the flavor profile that grain gives the beef.
I
Um,
love that. And I mean, and good to know, right? Like I always think support local. I'm a huge person in that. And we have so many great things going on in Ashland that it's so easy. Like it's so easy. But then surrounding towns, obviously, and the fact that you can get it shipped to Hawaii. I have several friends in Hawaii. So this is, which I always find so interesting every year when we go, that they're like, you should try our beef. I'm like, I live in Nebraska. Like,
yeah.
I promise you, I'm here for the seafood.
Well, that's what I think is like the handful of customers, they go there and like, we want our beef to meet us there in Hawaii. And I was like, I can do that for you.
Love that. And it's just such a great story. Like you said, just I love that you've had great mentors along the way. And not only have you been mentored, but I know you've been one to many. You've pivoted well. I think you have found and used your strengths of positive mental attitude and having a growth mindset of finding the joy in every job, every career, I should say, that you have ended up in. And you've always looked at the greatest, like, what can I do while I'm here? Well, what can I do while I'm here right now, instead of begrudgingly showing up and looking at like, and I know my neighbor and I've talked a lot about this. Like sometimes you just have to start at the front desk
Yes.
and start there and just be all in. And you've had the opportunity to work in startups, especially in Seattle, of sometimes you're doing all the jobs.
Yes. You don't have the luxury of being able to hire every single position. You have to work your way up to it. And I think I'm thankful for that. It's taught me how to hustle. And I'm sure there's going to be more stops along the way where I may have to pivot, but you have to have that, be able to have that hustle. And yeah, I was just talking to Justin, I think the other night at dinner, saying, I can't believe it's been almost 10 years this fall that we've moved to Nebraska. It seems like yesterday. And I'm really fortunate the opportunities I've had to not have to choose between a career and being mom.
Right. Right. You get to have both, which is
Yeah.
lovely from the comfort of your home, which
Yeah.
is beautiful. And just to raise your family around this and 5 generations, that's what I learned that's new. And that is so cool. I
Yeah.
love that. I absolutely love that. But we will attach your website to everything so people can find you. And the question we always end with, Lindsey, is our podcast is called Meet Me in the Penthouse. What does it mean for you to live in the penthouse or be in the penthouse?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think being fulfilled, where like looking back at all of my stops and saying, I feel good about that. I feel fulfilled. I've made it here. I've made it here. I don't need anything else. And just having a sense of accomplishment and being fulfilled in what I've done in my personal life, professional life, that I've made it to the penthouse.
You definitely are. And we're happy to join you and support you there. So
Yeah, thank you.
I love that word. I love fulfillment anyway. So, well, and we thank you for tuning in. And I always say this, if you love what you hear, please go on Apple. Apple is where it's at, and give us a 5-star review and write something, share it with your network. That's how we get the word out, definitely. And always follow us at Sisters Next Door, www.sistersnextdoor.com, and join our wait list for whatever program we have. But definitely the big one coming up is the Women's Collective. And if you need more information about that, please reach out. We're really excited to launch that in September. So more is coming, and I know more is coming for you, Lindsey. And I'm just so grateful for your time and also a new friendship. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Thanks for the chat today. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, we'd love to have you join our waitlist for our class of You from the Top. There are going to be incredible women who are making incredible, decisive, clear decisions. The energy is fabulous. The view from the top is fabulous, and there's room for you at the top. Go to sistersnextdoor.com and join our waitlist.